or factors that influence us to say yes. It is highly manipulative. There are many people who work in sales or marketing that use these principles. They might use different names for them, but these are the original concepts that Cialdini published in his book. So we are going to look at the tactics, and again, to make sure that you know if somebody is using it on you. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the idea of credibility and status. So this was a presentation given to highly credible people, people who are doctors, so they have MDs and PhDs, so they're educators, social workers, psychologists, and the key is that they were being given a presentation in an area that wasn't that familiar to them. So it was on mathematical game theory and how it's applied to physical education. And after the presentation, they were supposed to rate how valuable it was, if they learned a lot of information and material. So there were two different presenters. In the first case, the first presenter, his name was Dr. Fox. He came from the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, but he is actually an actor, and he is not a scientist, but he has a script, and his presentation is going to be very well presented. He's going to be highly confident, articulate, no ums, no ahs. He's going to make it funny, but there's actually going to be no important content. He's going to talk in circles. His jokes aren't really going to correlate to the material itself. So at the end of the day, they wouldn't really get anything out of it. However, they wanted to see if they would value the way that the presenter speaks over the material itself. And again, these are highly educated people. The second person coming in was a true scientist, and he was going to speak in a way that maybe was a little more monotone. There were no jokes, it may not have been as articulate in his presentation style. So at the end of the day, when they asked these highly educated people to rate how successful this presentation was in the material itself, the MDs and the PhDs rated Dr. Fox's presentation as, a higher value than the scientist. So this really shows how first impressions, right? The way that we speak, the way that we present ourselves, we think of this very highly over even what they are saying. And unfortunately, we might view someone who speaks in a way that is more monotone, that is not as articulate, that has some ums and ahs as being less credible. And that's not the case. So psychopaths, as an example, they're very superficially charming. They know how to sell things. They know how to speak to you in a manner that you're captivated, even though what they're saying might not actually have any merit to it. So you have to be really careful with this. Again, the whole idea is that even educated people believe someone who is basically providing them complete BS. So let's look at some of the persuasion tactics. This one is called the bait and switch. Now, this one is supposedly not allowed in Canada according to the Competition Act. However, unfortunately, I have seen this happen. So, I'm not sure how much they follow up on that, but it's not supposed to happen in Canada. So the whole idea is that they need to bait you in for something. So this could be an advertisement of, 80% off. And then you're like, oh, wow, the store is 80% off. So you go into the store only to find out there's only a couple items that are 80% off. And they're going to speak to you about a different item, or those 80% off items are gone, right? They're already been swept up. And then they're going to present something that's more expensive. And like, it's similar, but it's more expensive. The whole idea is that was their premise in the beginning. They didn't really have anything that was 80% off, but they bait you in and then they switch it and get you to buy something that is of higher value. This is not just in selling. They use this in interrogations where they could get someone to come in and, they could say something like, we're bringing everyone in from your street. We don't think you're guilty or anything, but we just want to bring you in and question you about some of your neighbors. So you come in thinking, okay, I'm going to be helpful. And then all of a sudden they switch on you and say, you're the person that they believe is the suspect. And again, it comes out of nowhere. And that's their original tone, but they need to bait you in and then they switch it. So they use this in mortgage markets, auto sellers, real estate agents, hotels, recruitment agencies. You might come in to look at a house and it's like, oh, well, this house no longer is on the market, but we're going to show you something that is similar, but again, it's always going to be more expensive. And that was their tactic all along. Online businesses will do this where they will present a picture of something. If you go on a website like Temu or something and they show you or Shein and it looks beautiful and wonderful. And then, when you get the actual item, it's completely different. That is the bait and switch. And it's not supposed to happen. But again, I do see it happening. If you're ever in the mall and they give you a little sample of something, they're baiting you in, but then they're switching it. This is not what they're going to present to you. They're going to get you to buy thousands of dollars of, their products. And that was the whole idea, was bait them in with something and then, switch it on them. So here is another example. She's using, she believes Amazon, Netflix, always had the intention of baiting people and then switching it to a higher price.
All along. They set the bait of low prices and got you hooked on the novelty and convenience. And now it's time for them to start making money so their investors can get their ROI. So they make the switch. They raise their prices a little, and then a little more, and then a little bit more again. And the service itself starts to decline. Netflix goes from $9 to $10 to eventually nearly $20 a month, and they introduce ads to the platform and ban password sharing. Amazon Prime goes from $79 to $99 to now $139 a year, and your 2-day delivery is more like 40s a lot of the time. If you're lucky, you'll at least get what you ordered, but I ordered a replacement blade for my blender, and I was sent a bottle of calamine lotion. So Uber rides become prohibitively expensive, and drivers start demanding tips. No joke, I took an Uber for the very first time a few weeks ago when my car was being serviced, and it cost me $15 to go 2.5 kilometers. I probably should have just ridden my bike or something. And speaking of tips and things being stupidly expensive, DoorDash starts adding service fees in addition to their delivery fees, and they mark up every item by 30 to 40% compared to what the restaurant actually charges.
Bait and switch explained. Bait and switch is a form of fraud used in retail sales but also employed in other contexts. First, customers are baited by merchants advertising products or services at a low price. But when customers visit the store, they discover that the advertised goods are not available, or the customers are pressured by salespeople to consider similar, but higher priced items, switching. Bait and switch techniques have a long and widespread history as a part of commercial culture. The intention of the bait and switch is to encourage purchases of substituted goods, making consumers satisfied with the available stock offered, as an alternative to a disappointment or inconvenience of acquiring no goods, or bait, at all, and reckoning on a seemingly partial recovery of sunk costs expended trying to obtain the bait. It suggests that the seller will not show the original product or service advertised but instead will demonstrate a more expensive product and/or a similarly priced but lower quality product. In either case, the seller expects to earn a higher margin on the substitute product. Online sellers use bait and switch by showing a photograph of a desired item to get sales, then shipping a cheaper copy of the item or a picture of the item. Car dealerships and auto brokers have also been known to use various forms of bait and switch or similar tactics, such as advertising vehicles online at what seems like a bargain price, only for the customer to discover that the specific vehicle is no longer available, as well as adding on a plethora of additional fees or even changing the sale price when coming close to closing the sale.
Okay, so that was the bait and switch. And again, it's supposed to be illegal, but if you have seen this happen, let me know. So now we're moving on to the tactic called foot in the door. And before we start that, the explanation to the foot in the door is due to this called the power of consistency. So for anyone who values being a consistent, reliable person, so this is a personality trait that you have. So as an example, when you say something that you're going to do something, you actually do it. There are people out there who say something and they don't actually follow up in their actions, so this wouldn't really apply to them. But if you're someone who really does value what you say and what you do matching, then this would apply to you. So this experiment was done in New York City, and they had people in a busy area at the beach. Imagine there's a stranger who is setting up their beach area. They've got their towel and they have their radio. Again, this is the 80s, so the radio is a lucrative item. And they are going to ask you this question. Would you be able to watch my things as I go to the bathroom or if I go out into the water? So it's not going to be a long period of time, but they have asked you. And you say, yeah, no problem. I'm sitting here. I'll watch your stuff. And then they have somebody come and steal their things. And they wanted to see if you would run after the thief because you said you were going to watch their things. So again, being a consistent person, that would lead them to believe that you would run after them. And what they found was, yes, the group that said and agreed that they would watch their things, when someone came up and stole their stuff, 20 different times this happened, 19 out of the 20 ran after the thief. As opposed to only 4 out of the 20 running after the thief when they had no interaction and they were not asked to watch the stranger's things. So again, when you value consistency, when you say you're going to do something, we really do commit to it, even though we don't owe this person anything. This is a stranger. But in your mind, you have said you are going to watch their things and you will follow through with that to the end. I have caught myself agreeing to do something like that. And, it's just like, are they ever going to come back? Is this a setup? But I continue. And one other example is more sinister. This is the Heaven's Gate cult. And the Heaven's Gate cult leader made sure that his followers were going to discuss what they were going to do on video. So they were going to maintain this consistency. And the idea is when you say out loud that you're going to do something in front of other people, most people feel obligated to complete that task, right? So in this case, they were all going to die by suicide because there was a belief that their bodies would enter a spaceship after this comet had passed. Anyways, it's absolutely ridiculous, but this was in the late 90s, I believe 1999, when this group of people committed to this. And the whole idea, again, is you see them speaking on camera and the leader's behind listening to them. And he's done this strategically because he knows once you say something and when they are about to actually do the task, more of them will commit to the task than if they didn't say it out loud.
Back there and gasped as each one of these members said their goodbyes.
The former Army paratrooper.
I just wanted to say how thankful I am to Doe and T for helping me and taking me under their wing, and all my classmates have been so great to me and all the problems I've caused.
The youngest member of the group, age 25. The oldest at 71, a mother of 3.
My thoughts in these last hours are only of joy and wonder at the thought of going home.
Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? Since I've been in class, I've learned the answers to all of those.
And we couldn't be happy about what we're about to do.
But there's something you should know as these people praise Doe and thank him for showing them the way. On the other side of the camera, Doe, there, listening.
Happiest day of my life.
Once you've said something in front of somebody else, you're far less likely to renege on that, right? Do you stand up and say, oh, guess what, I changed my mind and run out of the yard? No, you don't do that.
All right, so I was wrong on the date. It was actually 1997. This happened in California, and there are 39 people that committed to this act. A recent study reduced missed appointments at health centers by 18% simply by asking the patients rather than the staff to write down appointment details on future appointment cards. So again, by committing to it, by actually writing it down yourself, then they say you're more likely to stay consistent, right? This power of consistency happens for those that really value it versus the staff member writing it down and giving it to you. So this is the reason behind the foot in the door persuasive tactic. So the foot in the door tactic is 2 steps. First step is something small. It's the foot, right? So something small. And then the second step is something larger. It's the door. So when you get someone to agree to small requests and then eventually getting to the bigger requests that you have, people who value being consistent are more likely to say yes again, rather than just straight up asking them for the big task. And to show this, there was an experiment done where in the group of foot in the door, they started by asking for something small. So they asked on the phone if they would be able to answer questions about what soap products they use in their house. Once they agreed to that, then they asked for something way larger. And the larger request was if a group of 6, 7, 8 people come to their house and rummage through their things to collect inventory, which is a very intrusive request. But those that had agreed to answering soap products were 56% more likely to say yes to the bigger task. Those that immediately were asked, can 6, 7, 8 people come in your house and rummage through your things and collect inventory? Only 22% said yes. I'm actually surprised even 22% said yes to that. So this has been used on me many times. Now you might think, oh yeah, it's been used on me too. Where I had someone, ask if I could take care of their animals, and it's just overnight. I'm like, yeah, sure, it's just overnight. And then it's like, okay, a little while later, what about for a week, right? And so they value the idea that you've already said yes once, and if you're a consistent person, you're going to say yes again. In interrogations, they use this. So they're not going to, straight up say, did you murder this person? They're going to get you to commit to small agreements of you being a criminal. So, have you ever told a lie before? Have you ever stolen something before? Well, what do you call someone who steals? A thief. Okay, so you're a lying thief. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah, I guess, because I've agreed to these 2 things. They are very manipulative in the way that they can get you to agree to something. But starting off with something small and then getting to the larger request is what people will use, right? Can I have, for 5 minutes of your time? Sure. And then later on, would you be willing to do this later on that would take more time? There's another experiment they did where they had people sign if they were going to vote for a specific political party. And then once they signed it, they said, okay, would you be willing to have this like huge sign on your lawn, which is a pretty big request. And the people who were given that small request and agreed to it first were more likely again to then agree to the bigger, larger request.
The basis for what is called the foot in the door technique. The probability of generating compliance with any request is greatly increased when agreement is first secured to a much smaller commitment.
You ever stolen anything? Yes, I have. So what do you call someone who steals things? A thief. So you still think you love your neighbors yourself? You've hated someone, committed murder in your heart, and stolen from your neighbor? Have you ever lied to someone? Yeah, definitely. I think all these traits, humanistically, we have done one time or another. Not saying that I do these things now. How many lies have you told in your life? Probably couldn't count. There's a lot. So what do you call someone who tells lies? A liar, usually. So you're a lying thief. Sure. So here's the...
Alrighty. So again, would he have said he was a lying thief right away? Absolutely not. But they had him agree to the smaller things. There's another episode that I've seen where this person has asked them if they could help move something in their house, something small, just, a TV. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll help you. And then once you get there, they're like, oh, would you be able to move this now? And then move that. And then you're there for a couple hours. So again, they just ask for something small and then they continue to increase that. This is a completely different, opposite persuasive tactic, and this is called the door in the face. So it's also a 2-step process. First one is the door, which is something big. The face is something small. So the idea behind this is that it's easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. And this comes down to reciprocity. So if you're someone who values reciprocity, meaning that, let's say someone, your neighbor, gives you a gift for the holidays and you had no intention of giving them a gift, but now that they've given you a gift, you feel like you owe them in some way. It might be giving them a gift later, or maybe helping them out by doing something, shoveling their driveway. That is something that, does pertain to some people. You really just feel like you need to get to an equilibrium, and you feel like if you're not, there's just this uneven balance, and you want to always kind of be in that middle ground. So the idea of the door in the face is that someone is going to ask you for a really extreme request, one that they believe you're probably going to say no to. And you're going to feel a little bad, right? Because you want to come to a compromise. And then they're going to ask you for something smaller. All the while, the smaller thing is really what they wanted. I mean, yeah, they would have loved the bigger thing, but they know you're most likely going to say no. So now they think that you're going to feel like you've achieved some type of equilibrium, reciprocity, even though they manipulated you from the beginning. So I'll show you a few examples, and then I'll show you an actual video clip of one. So if somebody wants an extension on their assignment, let's imagine you need 2 more days to write your paper. So you go to your prof and you ask them if you can have a week, knowing full well that they're probably going to say no to a week. And once they say no, they do kind of feel a little guilty. So then you're going to say, how about 2 days? Can I just have 2 days? And they're like, fine. And they think, we've compromised, but really you manipulated them because you just needed 2 days. When somebody is trying to sell you, when you graduate, alumni is going to call you for a while, and they're going to ask for you to donate money to fan shop, and they're very probably going to say no to their assignment. Let's say they manipulated you from the beginning. So I'll show you a few examples, and then I'll show you an actual video clip of one. So if somebody wants an extension on their assignment, let's imagine you need 2 more days to write your paper. So you go to your prof and you ask them if you can have a week, knowing full well that they're probably going to say no to a week. And once they say no, they do kind of feel a little guilty. So then you're going to say, how about 2 days? Can I just have 2 days? And they're like, fine. And they think, we've compromised, but really you manipulated them because you just needed 2 days. When somebody is trying to sell you, when you graduate, alumni is going to call you for a while, and they're going to ask for you to donate money to fan shop, and they're very strategic in the way that they do this. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to ask for an outrageous amount that they know most likely you're going to say no to. So, would you be willing to donate, $100? And you're like, no, I'm not going to donate $100. Sorry. And then they say, any amount we are appreciative of. So would you be willing to donate even like $10. And you're like, yeah, fine, I can do $10. So again, you feel like you've come to a compromise. All the while, that's really what they're trying to get out of you is the $10. Ideally 100, but they know most likely. And now you feel like, oh, we're doing that. Versus if they just straight out ask for the $10. Real estate agents use this, people selling their homes, right? They start at a value that they know most likely you're not going to go at. Even the next choice isn't. They will have this is what we need, no matter what. And then you think that you're getting a great deal, all the while you're really not. But this is door in the face. So let's see it in action.
I'm back! Okay, let me see. You
guys are the one I want.
Oh my god,
Okay. Okay, so
so good, it's so good.
for the last few months, Cam and I have been redoing a house together that we're gonna flip, and I have to say, it has been going great.
We make an amazing team.
Yeah, the key is trust.
Absolutely. The key is I let Claire think she's in charge. I hide what I want in something bigger and more expensive. Then when she rejects that, we compromise on what I wanted all along. I call my method the Trojan horse. You know how I got Lily? I asked Mitchell for triplets. Okay, you are going to love what I found for the kitchen countertops. It's from Carrara, Italy.
Oh.
It's where Michelangelo got the marble to make the David.
Oh, now we know why the David couldn't afford any clothes.
Okay, well... Oh my god,
Okay. Okay, so
so good, it's so good.
for the last few months, Cam and I have been redoing a house together that we're gonna flip, and I have to say, it has been going great.
We make an amazing team.
Yeah, the key is trust.
Absolutely. The key is I let Claire think she's in charge. I hide what I want in something bigger and more expensive. Then when she rejects that, we compromise on what I wanted all along. I call my method the Trojan horse. You know how I got Lily? I asked Mitchell for triplets. You are going to love what I found for the kitchen countertops. It's from Carrara, Italy.
Oh.
It's where Michelangelo got the marble to make the David.
Oh, now we know why the David couldn't afford any clothes.
Okay, well, I also found this one. It's not as nice, but it's less expensive.
Well, it's still over budget, but I guess it's okay. Yeah. By the way, we couldn't get the powder room fixtures you wanted.
What? Why?
Well, they're 23% or $982 over the budget. Keep in mind that space is only 12% of 1,462 square feet. Whenever I need to rein in camp spending, I employ something that I like to call the number dump. So, unless you want to cut 16% or $1,764 from somewhere in the flooring budget, we've got to find another 4% from
Yeah,
the
well, as long as they're pretty, it's fine. It's fine.
Yesterday, I accidentally said 11.5. What you doing?
I think I have an idea. Okay, every house needs a wow factor, right? What is the one thing this backyard is missing?
Qualified buyer.
Okay, don't be silly. No, a water feature with a fire element.
Oh, God, no.
No, please. Now, just imagine this entire back wall cascading into a reservoir that erupts into flames on the quarter hour. How does that sound?
Like we need a white tiger.
Maybe I'm being a little ambitious, so let's just do a couple dancing water fountains, call it a day.
No, wait, Cam. That's going to still put us like $3,500 over our landscape budget. Right now, we're 12% higher than I thought we'd be at this point because Smitty added that 8% surcharge.
I'm sorry, did you just say 12%?
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. You do this all the time. You just throw numbers at me to frighten and confuse me. And here, I thought we were working so well together, and you're just being manipulative.
What about you, Cam? Pitching these crazy, over-the-top ideas just so you can slip in what you really want.
Oh, how dare you accuse me of Trojan horsing you?
You have a name for it?
No.
Okay. So yeah, he created a name, Trojan horsing, but that is the door in the face tactic that Cam is using. So again, the reciprocity experiment, they've shown this in tips, getting higher tips. So they found that servers who would give mints to the patrons before the bill is given, they are more likely to then give a higher tip. So when they gave them a single unsolicited mint, their tip rose by 3%. When they gave them 2 mints, it went up by 14%. And when they gave a personalized gesture, something like, you guys have been just wonderful customers. Thank you so much. I appreciate people like you. That increased the tip even more by 23%. So again, this idea of when they do something for you, you feel obligated to reciprocate in some way. And I mean, I've seen this happening to me. People are manipulating me in this way, but definitely tipping, right? That's a sales tactic that people will use. So whether it's they're giving you something or they're saying something kind to you, just be careful. They might be doing that to get a better tip. The next persuasive tactic is called lowballing. So lowballing is similar to bait and switch, but it's not the same thing. Bait and switch, they have to bait you in and then they're going to flip the switch on whatever it is. So it's going to be completely false to what they baited you in on. Lowballing is different. It does include 2 steps. The first step is to get you to commit to it. And then once you've committed, they lowball you with hidden costs. So to highlight this, there was an experiment done with psychology students, and they asked the students, for anyone who's interested in earning bonus points, who wants to, attain a better grade, please write down your name and your email address. So the first thing was the students who committed and said they were interested. After they committed, then they told them the information. It's on a Saturday morning. It will take a few hours out of your day. 56% committed to it because they had already signed and said they were going to. Had they been told that information right from the get-go, so the day that they said, hey, for anyone who's interested in a bonus marks, it will take place on a Saturday morning, it will take a few hours out of your day, only 31% said that they were going to commit to it. So again, when people get them to commit and then they provide the hidden cost, people talk themselves into the commitment. Here's another example. It's only for $200. Wow, I'm in. And then after the manager says, oh, sorry, with taxes, there might be an eco fee as a part of it. And then you're like, well, it's fine because you've already talked yourself into committing to it. In relationships, I see this where someone commits, you're emotionally committed, you've been dating for months, you've met the family, they've met yours, and then all of a sudden the hidden costs come out and you find out they're in, high credit card debt. There is abuse going on. And this is why people continue to stay in relationships that they shouldn't. From the outside, it's like, why would somebody do that? But lowballing is a strategy that is used on people. So again, if at the beginning, when they first start dating, they're presented with all this information about the person, sure, most people would say, I'm out. But once they commit and time has passed and then their true colors come out, people talk themselves into staying. I mean, you see this not just in relationships, but in things that, people that commit to a house and, they imagine themselves living in this house. They're so excited. They've told everybody about it. They've, this is going to be my room, and they start buying decor for it. And then all of a sudden the inspector comes and discovers that there are some problems and they're going to need to have, replacement of their heating system or their cooling system, which is going to cost a lot. People will most likely just talk themselves into committing because they've already emotionally committed and, told the realtor this is what they want. Then when they find out this information afterwards, they'll still commit. If they were told at the beginning, there's a house that needs a lot of renovations and, you look at how expensive that would be, then you're more likely to say, this is not the house for me. So this is unfortunate. This is why people do things that they later regret. And it is the principle of lowballing. So the next one is elicitation statements. So this works with people who you need to get some information from them. And oftentimes when you pose questions and people don't want to answer them because you're a stranger, they're not going to offer up information. So the way to do it is through elicitation statements. Now, the person on the right works in intelligence, and he discusses, there's some videos about him working with, interrogating terrorists and trying to get information from them. And it's brilliant what they do, but they use these elicitation statements. So the idea is that you're not asking them questions because when you ask questions, there's something that goes off in our brain to alert us, stop talking. Instead, you create statements. And you use statements to subtly encourage a person to reveal information. I've noticed this as well with mentalists or someone who says, they can read your future. Oftentimes, you don't even realize that you are giving them information. So they guide their opinion without realizing it. And there are reasons for this, and I'll come back to the video itself in a second. So the reason why people do this is the desire to appear competent. People enjoy demonstrating their knowledge and expertise, especially on topics that they are passionate about. As an example, you might say something like, I don't know much about, the profession of serving. And then they want to speak about it. They're excited to tell you about their job. The need for appreciation and politeness, flattery, and showing genuine interest can make a person feel valued and more willing to share. They become friends. The urge to correct mistakes. So this is one that is used intentionally making a false or slight incorrect statement. And you'll see how he uses this with trying to figure out what they get paid. So you say something that you know is false, and you go up to somebody at, a bar that's serving and say, I've heard that, you get paid $25 an hour and, you receive $500 in tips on an average night. And they're like, absolutely not. I don't know where you've heard that, but I make blah, 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 blah. And then they offer up information. Reciprocity, sharing a seemingly harmless piece of information, can make the other person feel a social obligation to reciprocate with information of their own. We've already talked about reciprocity, but this is how it's used in elicitation. And then avoiding security alarms. So as I mentioned, when you ask questions, this definitely, we have a mental filter that wards us from giving away sensitive information. When they use statements, it doesn't go off in our head and people will offer up. And you can see here how criminals will do this to gather information about a person's whereabouts, how long they're working until. This is not information that we would willingly give, but they can be very strategic in the things that they say to you without you even realizing that you're sharing information. So let's look at this in action.
Here's a tactic that all intelligence operatives learn, and it's called elicitation. You use statements instead of questions to get the most powerful information from other people. When a person's being asked a question, it raises a little door in the brain that says, I need to be careful about the answer. If you're responding to a statement, your brain does not have that little security guard that comes out. And so as a light example, let's just imagine you and me took an Uber to get here. And let's imagine you and me, we're going to take an Uber back. We get into that Uber and I say, I just read online that Uber drivers were rated the #1 job satisfaction of all the jobs in the country. And I just said a statement. And he's going to turn around and go, what? Where did you see this? So that starts a conversation. And then he says, no, it's really bad. I do this, and they take the money, and this, and then I do disbelief. This is another technique. Disbelief says, no way. There's no way that company would treat me like that. He goes, oh yeah, you'll never guess what happened just a couple weeks ago. And then he just kind of goes into this deep story that he would never tell another client. Who does he tell these stories to? Friends. I've made his brain start behaving in friend mode, and I haven't even asked any questions yet. And then let's say he goes into a story, and I said, my neighbor's daughter started driving for Uber, and she said she saw the wildest things happen in her backseat. And then you're going to hear a story again. And I have not asked any questions. And the way that I teach this is, if you and I are standing at the grocery store, and there's a young lady over there stocking fruits, and I said, all right, Leon, you've got 60 seconds to go up to this person and find out how much they make for a living, and you're not allowed to ask any questions. So if I went over to her and I said, hey, I'm trying to find the baby carrots, and she starts walking me over somewhere, haven't asked a question yet, that was a statement. And then I say, I just read on LinkedIn that you guys got bumped up to $22 an hour. That's unbelievable. That's great. Congratulations to everybody here. That's amazing. And she goes, what? We only make $17.50. Everybody does. I avoided that social barrier because there was no question being asked. A different way to do this is called quotes, facts, and figures. And you deliberately say, I saw a YouTube video, read an article, did something that said X, Y, and Z, and it triggers a need in the human brain that's almost irresistible, and it's called the need to correct the record. And the next way we do this is just making what's called a provocative statement. So let's say I ask you what you do for a living, and you say, well, I make YouTube videos. Now I'm starting this new podcast thing, and it's been interesting. It's been a good career change. And I say, wow, YouTube, that has got to be challenging. And then it starts coming out. It's like people can't resist. And then let's say you said, well, yeah, it's challenging. We did this, and monetizing, and YouTube language, and whatever else. And I said, I cannot imagine what that is. But that's got to be really stressful. So that probably keeps you up at night. And then just, yeah, I mean, when I'm editing videos, and then let's say you just talk about editing a video, and I said, editing videos. And then you keep talking.
All right. So that is brilliant and frustrating when we see this. You're like, wow, I have also shared a lot of information based on that type of persuasive tactic that has been used. Now, the principle of scarcity. This is one that explains COVID toilet paper craze that happened. So if you were one that went to the stores and wondered why is everybody buying all the toilet paper? What is going on? There's something in our brains going on that's like, okay, they know something that we don't. And when something is limited, when something is scarce, evolutionary reasons behind it is, we need to survive. So again, whether we know the reason behind it, but we see people are grabbing that item, we want it more. And businesses marketing, they know this, right? The whole idea of like limited seats available, having a clock count down the time when this is done, having special sales, for the holidays as an example. These are limited edition. Our brains are wired to want that. And the Bachelor, the Bachelorette, there's one Bachelor, one Bachelorette, and 20 plus people vying for their love. Do they genuinely love this person? Most likely not. If there were other people involved in the show that they could date too, they might say, yeah, I'm not interested in this person, because there's only one and everybody wants that one. You and your brain also want that one too. So scarcity in action. Here it is explained by the psychologist Cialdini.
Researchers went into a supermarket and randomly put in front of various brands on the shelves only 3 items per customer. Sales went up by over 200%. People want what they are constrained against having. And I know why. because they don't want to lose the opportunity to get it.
Okay, so how is this used in marketing exploitation? When they say there's a limited inventory, when they use countdown timers, when they launch limited edition or seasonal products, when they create exclusivity through a tiered access. So again, if you're part of this prestige program, you get an extra percentage off, and leverage real-time demand as implicit scarcity. So in that example, if they had a sign that says you only get to have two, you can only buy two of these, then people are like, I want two, I want more. The reason behind it, what happens in our brain, we have this FOMO, the fear of missing out, loss aversion, avoidance of missing opportunities, and exclusivity. When we are associated with status and prestige, we wanted more. So don't fall for this. I see this in people trying to sell gym memberships. And I'm at a gym where they don't get commission for selling memberships, which I love because they don't, bombard you. But Good Life is one that they do. And they know they'll present some type of deal, and the whole idea is it's a limited time only, and once you leave and come back, it's no longer going to be on, so you need to make that decision, which comes to my next point of time. So manipulating time and forewarning does get people to agree to something that they might later regret. So this is an experiment done on a very busy subway in New York, and there are two different groups. So let's imagine that you have secured a seat and it's going to start to get really busy. In one of the groups, somebody's going to come up to you and say, hey, in a few minutes, someone's going to approach you and ask if they can have your seat. You can agree, you can disagree, but here's some forewarning that somebody's going to ask for your seat. In the other group, there's no forewarning. So someone just comes up to them and says, can I have your seat? And they wanted to see which group was more likely to give them the seat to comply. Deal. And the whole idea is, it's a limited time only. And once you leave and come back, it's no longer going to be on. So you need to make that decision, which comes to my next point of time. So manipulating time and forewarning does get people to agree to something that they might later regret. So this is an experiment done on a very busy subway in New York, and there are two different groups. So let's imagine that you have secured a seat and it's going to start to get really busy. In one of the groups, somebody's going to come up to you and say, hey, in a few minutes, someone's going to approach you and ask if they can have your seat. You can agree, you can disagree, but here's some forewarning that somebody's going to ask for your seat. In the other group, there's no forewarning. So someone just comes up to them and says, can I have your seat? And they wanted to see which group was more likely to give them the seat to comply. What would you think? The answer is the group that had forewarning, they were less likely to give up their seat. The group that had no forewarning, where someone just approached them and asked for their seat, 56% of them were more likely to give up their seat. The forewarning group could come up with a script. In their head, they could say, okay, this is what I'm going to say when somebody asks me for my seat. I'm going to say no because I have back pain and my sciatica is acting up and I just need to sit. Whatever it is that you're going to say in your head, you feel better equipped to say no. When you get someone off guard and they don't have an opportunity to think about things, they're more likely to agree to something that they probably later will regret and say, why did I give up my seat? Now I'm uncomfortable and I'm standing and, it's dangerous and, I was there first. But we do have this problem with time. So when someone doesn't give you time to think about whatever it is that they're selling you, this is a problem. You can see scammers doing this where, you have to make that decision and they're pretending to be a bank. And the banks are saying we would never do that, hang up, call us, and we would say, yeah, this is, what's going on. But people feel pressured and then they agree to something only to find out that they've been scammed. Principle of authority is that we are more likely to agree to things when someone is in a position of authority. And they found that physiotherapists, for example, are able to persuade more of their patients to comply with recommended exercise programs.
Hello. Can I call you back in however many this is? Okay, I'm just in the middle of one of those. It's like a video quiz thing. It has like 5 minutes left, or yeah, like 7 minutes. So I'll call you right back. Okay, bye bye. Love you.
If they display their degrees on the wall. So when people can see that they're legit and they went to a specific university and they have their master's degree or a specific degree and whatever it is, we then believe them to be more credible and we will be more likely to agree to what they're asking us to do. So you can see how this can get to very dangerous dark side of things where people in authority, there's this blind obedience that people have and they agree to things that they really shouldn't be agreeing to do. So this is shown in the Milgram experiment. The Milgram experiment is an experiment where there's 1,000 participants at a prestigious university at Yale. It's a very prestigious university. So that's the main point, is it is prestigious. You wouldn't think anything bad is going on. And then somebody in a white lab coat is giving you this information. So they look legit. They look like a scientist. And they are telling you that you are going to be the teacher. And then the person beside you, who you don't realize is an actor, but you believe they're a participant, is the learner. And they're being set up to this machine. You can see that every time they get the answer wrong, you as the teacher are instructed to give them a shock. And it increases in voltage every time they get it wrong. Now, the thing is, they're not actually getting shocked, but you think they are. It sounds like they are. Sometimes they're screaming because they're in pain. And the whole idea is they're trying to figure out what person would be likely to go all the way up to 450 volts, which would kill a person. Now, when they asked psychiatrists, they said, well, it's only about 1%, because 1% of the world is sadistic, and only sadistic people would do something like that. Only to find out that 65% of the participants would go all the way to 450 volts because somebody in a white lab coat asked them to do it. And oftentimes what they do is they look behind them, they look at the person in the white lab coat for reference, and they're like, proceed, it's okay. And so they diffuse the responsibility. The person in the white lab coat told me to do it. And because they're in this authority position, people will proceed with these terrible events. So this was definitely something that they didn't think was going to happen in this American experiment. So Zimbardo is going to discuss this in a little more detail. You can see here, it started with 15 volts. It goes all the way up to 450 volts. The beginning, 100% of the participants, and then right at the end, where it was 450 volts, which would kill a person, 65% went all the way because someone in a white lab coat instructed them to do so.
So why don't I put you in a situation and give you a chance to see what you would do? And so what he did was he tested 1,000 ordinary people, 500 in New Haven, Connecticut, 500 in Bridgeport, and the ad said, psychologists want to understand memory. We want to improve people's memory because memory is the key to success. Okay? We're going to give you $5. $4 for your time. We don't want college students. We want men between 20 and 50. In later studies, they ran women. Ordinary people, barbers, clerks, white collar people. So you go down, and one of you is going to be a learner. One of you is going to be a teacher. The learner is a genial middle-aged guy. He gets tied up to the shock apparatus in another room. The learner could be this middle-aged, could be as young as 20. And one of you is told by the authority, the guy in the lab coat, your job as teacher is to give this guy material to learn. Gets it right, reward him. Gets it wrong, you press a button on the shock box. First button is 15 volts. He doesn't even feel it. That's the key. All evil starts with 15 volts. And then the next step is another 15 volts. The problem is, at the end of the line is 450 volts. And as you go along, the guy is screaming, got a heart condition, I'm out of here. You're a good person, you complain. Sir, who's going to be responsible if something happens to him? The experiment says, don't worry, I will be responsible. Go, continue, teacher. And the question is, who would go all the way to 450 volts? You should notice here, when it gets up to 375, it says dangerous to be a shock. When it gets up to here, it's triple X, the pornography of power. So Milgram asked 40 psychiatrists, what percent of American citizens would go to the end? They said only 1%, because that's sadistic behavior, and we know, psychiatry knows, only 1% of Americans are sadistic. Okay, here's the data. They could not be more wrong. 2/3 go all the way to 450 volts. This was just one study. Milgram did more than 16 studies. And look at this. In study 16, when you see somebody like you go all the way, 90% go all the way. In study 5, if you see people rebel, 90% rebel. What about women? Study 13, no different than men. So Milgram is quantifying evil as to the willingness of people to blindly obey authority to all the way to 450 volts. And it's like a dial on human nature. A dial in the sense that you can make almost everybody totally obedient, down to the majority, down to none. So what are the external parallels? All research is artificial. What's the validity in the real world? 912 American citizens committed suicide or were murdered by family and friends in Guyana jungle in 1978 because they were blindly obedient to this guy, a pastor, not the priest, a pastor, Reverend Jim Jones. He persuaded them to commit mass suicide. And so he's the modern Lucifer, a man of God who becomes the angel of death. Milgram's study is all about individual authority to control people. Most of the time, we are in institutions.
Alrighty, so he explains, I'm just going to fast forward that. He gives the example of Jim Jones, who is a cult leader, and Jim Jones was able to persuade, as their pastor, to commit this mass suicide by drinking the cyanide mixed with type of Kool-Aid, right? The whole don't drink the Kool-Aid, that's where it comes from. And, this blind obedience happens. There's so many scenarios. If you study cults, you can see many cult leaders doing this. Charles Manson is another example with his followers. Next persuasion tactic is called the principle of liking. It's exactly what it sounds like, is basically manipulating people through likable salespeople. right? So someone who's trying to get you to say yes, whether it's sales or whatever it is they're trying to get you to do, they're likable, they're attractive, they have a likability quality to them. They'll interact with you. They might, say something nice about you, saying, oh, you have a really nice smile, right? They definitely use that to their advantage. In the Friends episode, Chandler is trying to quit the gym and he can't do it without the aid of his friend Ross, who comes with him. And Ross ends up getting a membership because the woman who is speaking to him is this beautiful, attractive woman. And so she ends up persuading him through the principle of liking to buy a gym membership as well. So that concludes your lesson on persuasion. If you have any questions, please let me know.